Now, this large central window that we see inside the interface is called the viewport. It's also referred to as the editor window. And this viewport is really the expression of the 3D space that we're going to be working in. And if you remember your geometry from high school, the 3D space can be divided into a series of planes and axes. And those planes and axes have positive and negative values. And you can see them expressed here in the viewport. At the center of the viewport is the world center. And this world is divided up into axes and planes, and there are colors associated with them. The red axis is always x-axis. The y-axis, if I navigate down, I'm going to navigate in this viewport. You can't see the top of the y-axis because it's extending off the screen. I'm going to use this icon up here in the upper right hand of the viewport and to navigate down. And if I click on this and drag downward, I can now position the viewport, and that's a navigation within the viewport. Now, there's keyboard shortcuts for that. We're going to talk about that in a subsequent movie. So these axes are color coordinated, and the colors are very important. And it's very easy to remember. X, Y, Z, RGB. The x-axis is always red. The y-axis is always green. The z-axis is always blue. And that holds true for objects as well as the world that you're working in. The arrows are very important as well because the direction of the arrow indicates the positive direction for that axis. So this is the positive x side of the axis. This is the negative x side of the axis. This is positive z, positive y, and negative y down here. This viewport is showing us the perspective view. But sometimes the perspective view can be tricky to understand, and so the programmers in their infinite wisdom gave us orthographic views, or views without perspective. And in order to access those, I need to click on this icon right here. And this will switch my viewport from a single perspective view to a four-way split screen, showing me the perspective as well as the orthographic views. And so there's 3 orthographic views by default, but you can set up others. And the default orthographic views are the top view here, the front view here, and the right view here. And really what these orthographic views are is they show us planes, and the planes are defined by 2 axes. And the top view is defined by the x and z axes, and that defines the xz plane. The front view is defined by the x and y axes, and this is the xy plane. The right-hand view, z and y, it's the zy plane, or yz plane. Now, I can navigate inside of these views using these icons in the upper right-hand corner of the viewport. And if I want to navigate in the right-hand view, I can click on this pan icon, and I can pan around. And I'm moving left, right, up, and down in this orthographic view. If I grab this icon right here, I can do a dolly move, and I'm moving into or out of that right-hand view. If I click and drag left or right, up and down doesn't work. You have to drag left or right. And you can dolly in or dolly out. And that works for each of these views. If I click on the top view, I can pan around, I can dolly in or out, and the same holds true for the front view. And in the perspective view, there's a third icon available to me, and that is this orbit icon. And if I click on this, I can orbit around my scene. In the orthographic views, this icon does not work. That orbit is based on a 3D perspective view, and since you don't have 3D perspective in these views, you can't orbit. That's the basics of the viewport, and the navigation that we use in there with those icons is a little bit clunky. And in another movie in this chapter, I'm going to show you how to move around much more efficiently using keyboard shortcuts.